terms of the sound of the band, to what extent were they coming from a punk tradition?
When you listen to a lot of punk stuff, it's quite weak, really, whereas heavy metal has got a lot more power. They took the sort of punk thing but made it into heavy metal.
Youngsters coming up at around about that time would have thought, well, hey, yeah, I like rock, I like metal, but I can take the speed, because, of course, punk bands, all of a sudden, everything was quadrupled in speed.
We love things like Sex Pistols. We really liked that first album. It did definitely influence us. I think we just took all the naff things and threw them away and kept the good bits, punk, the prog rock, the Black Sabbath, the Led Zeppelin, the riff-orientated stuff. It all mixed together into like a melting pot, and up popped really the new wave British heavy metal.
Here we go!
Bringing together the speed of punk with the heaviness of prog rock and classic metal, the new wave of British heavy metal introduced a whole new sound to rock music, and the movement was starting to build in London. But how did this movement become known as this thing called the new wave of British heavy metal?
I was invited by the manager of the Music Machine. How would you like to put on your own, like, 3-band show during the week? And I thought, yeah, what a shot. It's going to enable me to present to the industry in London new bands.
Jeff Barton from Sounds was sent along to review 3 bands, Iron Maiden, Angel Witch and Samson, and a big double-page spread about the bands. Alan Lewis, the editor at the time, added a subtitle, The New Wave of British Heavy Metal, and that was it. It was that simple.
Do you remember when you heard the term new wave of British heavy metal and what you thought of it?
Here we go, more fluffy with spandex and good Les Pauls.
Where were you in 79 when the gang began to burst? Did you check us out down at the local show? Were you wearing denim, wearing leather? Did you run down to the front? Did you queue for your tickets through the ice and snow?
Suddenly there was lots of bands all over the UK. Nobody was aware of each other before Sounds kind of tied it all together. We did a little 4-track cassette, sent it off to Sounds, and it appeared in Jeff Barton's playlist. That was such a result. You could do that. You send it off and there it was. Jeff Barton liked it. Awesome.
If you looked at the marquee in 79 and 80, the punk bands had disappeared, and then there was the list of heavy metal, heavy rock bands, from Gary Moore right the way through to Tigers, right the way through to Raven.
People were fed up of just having the punk thing. Not everybody wanted, quiff back hair and look like a pirate.
This was the logical next step to the bands like Deep Purple. All of us at one stage were thinking, what will happen next? And now we had the answer.
By the end of the 70s, the new wave of British heavy metal was established as a vibrant underground movement and was spreading to local scenes across England. But the movement had still not captured the attention of major labels. And then this all changed in 1980 when Iron Maiden released their seminal debut record, Iron Maiden.
Why do you think EMI wanted to sign the band? Did they see something in this band, or were you pushing this band on them? How did it work?
They saw one thing. That's packed venues. Going nuts.
They came down to the sound house and saw it was jammed back. They couldn't get in. In fact, they were stuck at the back. They couldn't see properly or anything like that. And I think whether they liked the music or not, they thought, bloody hell, what's going on here? We better sign these before someone else does.
It was full of people wearing red T-shirts with Iron Maiden on. And just to the right of the stage, Ozzy Osbourne was there. I remember seeing him, who looked at the time a little bit kind of worse for wear, but interested in it. Obviously kind of looking and thinking, new generation here.
What do you think you guys were doing that was different in those early years compared to the previous generation of metal, like the Sabbaths and the Zeppelins and the Purples?
I suppose it was, you know, the aggression in the music and playing a little faster maybe, but, you know, we wanted to incorporate a lot of the key things like twin guitars and melody and prog type of stuff as well, chime changes and stuff, but just with a more aggressive attitude.
It was so refreshing, it was so new. This was what I wanted. This is what I and so many people have been waiting for through those sort of punk years. This is what the likes of Judas Priest, AC/DC had been prepping us for. And then it came, bang, and it was such a great album.
Keep your distance, walk away, don't take it, baby. Don't you stray, don't fade away, yeah. Watch your step, these are too dead to come by me, yeah. Don't you stray from a narrow way, yeah.
Another element that's key on that first record is, of course, that image of Eddie. Why did that image become so important?
It was very clear with the band we weren't going to get a sort of photograph of them looking real scary, you know, or looking real cool. I mean, May's not a cool band. It's not a scary band. It's about music. We needed something, and, you know, the way Roger Dean did Yes, not with a single character, but they were looks. And I was more into getting a single character.
Eddie the Head was a skull on a plank of wood with a mouth that used to come smoke out. But I'll never forget that Rod wanted to call it John or something like that, or Jim, Bob, something like that. And we just sat there and we said, his name's Eddie. He went, why? He said, because it's an Ed. It's an Ed, so it's Eddie.
Fans were going through record shops, flicking through the album rack and whatever, and pull that out and go, oh, bloody hell, what's that? The Eddie on the front. Then they turn it over and see the live thing. Wow, I've got... And a lot of them said they bought the album without even really knowing what it was about, just because of the cover. So, you know, it definitely made an impact.
You look kind of punky, though. A little spiky hair.
Don't start.
I think it was really the first big record, you know, a top 10 album of this whole new sound. I guess it would be like the first massive Sabbath album or the first big Zeppelin album. Bit of a sigh of relief, I think, for a lot of fans. Hey, actually, you know, this is going to work.
I don't know if any of you out there have got our album. Oh, good. This song is called Running Free.
Reading in 1980, you guys also played, and that seemed to be a pretty important step forward.
Obviously a fantastic big festival that, you know, I'd been there in '73, you know, to see Genesis and loads of other bands and stuff, and, you know, so to actually play there was amazing, and the reaction we got was incredible.
It was a fantastic show for us, and I think that took us to another level. Plus, you're playing to 30,000 people in one go.
What do you think the significance of the exposure at Reading is for the Nawabum movement?
There's probably a whole raft of people who are there for Whitesnake, who are there for UFO, and they're going to experience these new bands, these bands, so they probably aren't that bothered. They bought their ticket for the other things. And so, okay, this is pretty good. Yeah, this is Tigers of Pantang went down really well. Iron Maiden obviously went down extremely well. Def Leppard didn't get down particularly well, but that's because of the allegations of sellout that were levelled at them.
There's a big piece in the newspapers about them selling out, and it came on, and the reception was horrific. Bottles of pee, you know, in 2-litre bottles were being thrown up, hitting the stage, exploding over the band. Guys having dumps in paper and I mean, really, really bad.
Def Leppard's poor reception at Reading is one of the most notorious moments in the history of heavy metal, and their membership in the Nawabum movement has long sparked debate among metal fans. So I'm meeting with Def Leppard singer Joe Elliott to get his take on what exactly happened at Reading and how it impacted their early career.
So how did it feel to have that backlash? I mean, most famously, I mean, at Reading, you guys weren't received very well. I mean, was that...
I disagree with that, actually.
Yeah.
I absolutely disagree with that Reading thing. People go on and on and on about we didn't go down well at Reading. No, the reviews said we didn't go down well at Reading. Kids throw stuff when they're drunk. They pee in the bottles, screw the tops back on if you're lucky, and then they launch them at the stage because it's something fun to do. We got that, but so did everybody else, because I watched all the other bands getting it too. One guy writes it, and everybody says it's gospel. Well, I'm telling you now, it's I think that all came about because we had a song called Hello America, and they thought that we were that conniving. It's like we weren't even that clever. You know, that was just a vision of a kid sitting in a factory, staring at 4 blank walls with no windows. I think I wrote the lyrics to Hello America in 1977. Didn't even have a passport.
Do you remember the first time you heard that term, the new wave of British heavy metal, what you thought of it?
The only thing I do remember is desperately trying not to be part of it. Hard rock covers a multitude of bands, from Van Halen to the Kinks. New wave of British heavy metal, for a start, it ties you into being British. In the mainstream press, heavy metal bands were all just thought of as just stupid. And I didn't want us to be part of that. I want us to be mentioned in the same breath as Zeppelin, the Who, the Kinks, the Stones, the Beatles, Pink Floyd. These were all the kind of bands that we'd seen the global success that they'd achieved. And that's what we were after.
By the early 80s, Def Leppard had disassociated themselves from Nawabum and embarked on their quest for success in America. So now that Leppard were no longer part of the movement, what would be the next step in the evolution of the new wave of British heavy metal?
And at 19, here on Top of the Pops, we invite you to run for the hills with the sound of Iron Maiden.
White man came across the sea. He brought us pain and misery.
With the release of Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast in 1982, the new wave of British heavy metal started to crack the mainstream. And it was Maiden's new lead singer, Bruce Dickinson, that helped propel the movement towards mass popularity. So I'm meeting with Bruce to ask him why he joined Maiden and what his vocal approach added to the sound of the band.
In '81, you played Reading with Samps.
Yeah.
My understanding is that Steve and Rod saw you perform at that show.
Well, they went there specifically to see me perform.
So yeah, why do you think that was a significant moment?
It's when I got the job.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. I mean, I had to wait 3 months before they fired Paul, and in the meantime, I did some singing, and they had to go through a difficult time. They'd been unfaithful, and they were waiting for their infidelity. You know, they were waiting till they could have their moment, and you know, I mean, it's a terrible thing to say, but I mean, it's true.
I think Paul's voice suited the first album. He struggled with the second album, but if the band was going to break it in America, they're going to need a singer that's going to compete with Ronnie James Dio, Robert Plant, Dave Lee Roth, all the guys with the high range vocal. If you listen to any heavy rock, heavy metal band, David Coverdale, any vocalist, they need to get up there.
Paul had a very kind of guttural voice, and it had a style and a charm which was unique. How far it could go was, you know, was questionable. I think Steve was questioning that. You know, he wanted a voice that could do a lot with a bigger range.
Bruce's vocal range was, you know, way different from Paul's, and so we were able just to throw pretty much anything at him, really, and we did.